Miguel Dorati here on the MMA Museum podcast, and welcome back to everybody. We have another guest, another victim, a longtime MMA hardcore guy, old school guy, and a guy I've had interactions with throughout his career. Found him in Florida, originally from Massachusetts. I'm talking about El Conquistador, Jorge Rivera, or George Rivera. George, how you doing?
Living the dream, brother.
You feeling good? How's Florida treating you?
I like Florida. I like Florida a lot. The weather's always good. I got a backyard full of mangoes, avocados, star fruit, friggin' you name it. And lemons, coconuts, living off the land.
It sounds like you are living the dream. That's awesome. You couldn't do that in Massachusetts. Now, you're originally from the Massachusetts area. Tell me about your
Yep.
story coming up as a kid. Were you like a martial arts fan? Did you wrestle in high school? What's the story all the way to the beginning?
You know, uh, coming up, I was just a knucklehead. Got into a lot of fights, found myself in trouble. Uh, Never really much of. I like football and basketball growing up. I like baseball. I played baseball a lot. But as far as fighting, nah, man, I just used to fight in the streets. Uh,
Now, at some point, um, the Massachusetts area, has your generation had a lot of guys that were really, able to nurture each other. But even before that, there's guys like Jason DeLucia up there, and you crossed paths with Jason in the '90s. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yep. I had been in jail in 95, 96. When I had gotten out, I was watching the UFC back in the early 90s, in 93 and 94, and it had fascinated me. Royce Gracie fascinated me. So I was looking to find a way to get involved in it. And my buddy had mentioned to me about Jason, and he had been fighting in Pancrase, and I wasn't aware of Pancrase at the time. So he started sending me videotapes. This is way back in the days. We're talking about VHS now. So he started sending me VHS tapes of Jason fighting, and I was like, no shit. Hey, can you introduce me to this guy? And I was pestering him for about a good few months. And Jason had just finished fighting. I think it was Funaki, and he had a bad knee. And I go to the gym to meet him. This is in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I go to the gym to meet him. when, I, when I got there, he gives me this videotape. And he's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I just want to, try this and that." And I was nervous and anxious at the time. And he gives me this tape, and he's like, "I want you to take this home and watch it. And if you still want to do this, I'll see you here next week." So I go home and I put this video in. It's a video of him beating the shit out of this dude who wanted to fight. So it's called an initiation. That's how he brings him in. He gets initiated in. And he beat the tar out of this kid. So I'm at my house watching this with my dad. My dad looks at me and he goes, "You out of your fucking mind?" He goes, "You're gonna get killed." He's like, "Why would you want to do this?" And I looked at him and I was like, "What do I have for options right now?" You mean I was a knucklehead growing up, very open about this. I had two kids. I was 25 at the time. I had no trade. I was bouncing around doing minimum wage jobs. And in my mind, I was like, what do I have to lose? You know what I mean? If I can learn how to do this. And then also in my mind, I was thinking these guys were making big money. I had no idea that they weren't making money at the time. So, I tell him I'm going to do this. So he doesn't say a word to me. I go to the school the following Saturday. And the night before, I had been partying. I walked in hungover. So he looks at me and he just shakes his head. Here I am thinking I'm going to fight him, but he's got a bad knee. So in my mind, I'm thinking he's got a bad knee. It's not going to be that bad. But in comes this other dude who's a black belt in judo. And this dude is Keith Raquel. So he introduces me to Keith. And I'm like, I'm going to fight this dude? If you ever look at Keith, Keith is built like a brick shithouse. He's just stacked dude. He's solid. So I'm like, fuck. I'm like, all right, I guess I'll fight Keith. So we start going at it, and Keith puts me in a side choke, a triangle choke, and I immediately tap out. And this, I'll never ever forget this shit. I'll never ever forget this. Jason runs over and he's screaming at the top of his lungs. He's like, "Why did you let him go?" He goes, "Don't you ever fucking let him go. Don't let him go." And I'm looking at him like, hey, dude, I didn't come here to get killed. You know what I mean? I just fucking came here to initiate. You know, so we start going at it again. I knew nothing. So Keith takes me down with ease. He throws me over, lands in side mount, puts me in this choke again. I start tapping. He's not letting go. He's squeezing harder. So I start freaking out and spazzing. Dude, I got out of the choke. You know, when I get out of the choke, he walks over to me and he goes, I'll never forget this. I'll never, ever forget this. He says to me, this is what I'm talking about when it comes to fighting. When you don't have an option and you think death is the only way out, you will fight until you get out. And never, ever, ever forgot that. That stuck with me for the rest of my life. So we start going back and at it, this and that. And I ended up getting Keith with a good shot. I got a good right hand. And I dropped him with the right hand. So then they're looking at me like, oh, maybe this kid's got something. You know, he was there with Hagar Chin. Hagar was there as well. So he just looks at me like, all right. So, you know, we're sparring for about a good half hour, 45 minutes. When I tell you that I was exhausted, you gotta remember that I'm 25, out of shape. I've never done this before. I'm exhausted. But then he wants me to do 200 squats, you know, jump over this rope and duck under, all this crazy stuff. About 2 or 3 minutes into it, dude, I threw up all over his gym. Like, and every time I went to get up, I just kept on throwing up. And I couldn't stop throwing up. Excuse me. And I'm sitting there and I'm laying down on my back and my legs were beat up. You know what I mean? I was beat up. And I could hardly walk. He walks over with this bucket and a mop. He goes, clean your shit up.
Oh, man.
So I clean it up. I had to take the elevator down. I get the elevator down to the bottom floor. And he tells me, he goes, if you want to start training, I'm here. You know, it was like every other day, like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can come whenever you want. I was like, all right, cool. So, you know, I started going there. I was there religiously. I didn't let him down. I was there every single day. And for the first 2 years, dude, I got my ass beat every single day. Jason was a physical trainer. Like, it was no joke. You know, I got knocked out a few times. I got my knees torn out. You know what I mean? Like, it was rough. It was rough. That's how I learned. And it was weird because when Jason and I split, he did his thing, I did my thing. When I went to gyms to start training, I didn't know any other way. Like, I thought this is how people train everywhere. So when I start going to these other gyms, I start fucking up their students. And the teachers are like, hey, what are you doing? You know, I'd be cross-facing them and just rough. And they're like, hey, these guys pay to come here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And in my mind, I knew no better. I thought this is the way it was in every other school. And that was a huge learning curve for me as well. I was like, oh, no shit. This isn't how it is everywhere. You know, so.
No, Jason's an old school guy. You know, Jason, it still lives that credo of being a real true martial artist. That's why, you know, he's one of those guys I enjoyed, you know, finding people that are from his branch. That's interesting, you know. So,
he's no joke.
Raquel.
Yeah, so that's what ended up happening. You know, Jason wanted to do his own thing and he didn't have time to train me, and I understood that. So, you know, I started training with Keith Raquel, and they opened up a submission school called the Massachusetts Submission Academy out of Clinton, Massachusetts. And all the tough guys in New England were going there. And I love Keith, man. He did a lot for me. He did a lot for me. He introduced me to a lot of people, and he taught me a lot. You know, I took a lot of beatings in that gym. You know, and what those two guys really did for me was they made me mentally tough. Like, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that this isn't going to be easy. I knew it's rough. It's a rough sport. Let me go back a couple steps.
Yes, please.
My first MMA match was with Kip Kohler, who does the NAGA events.
Okay.
He was running called the Rhode Island Valley Tudo. And my first fight was against a guy named Elias Rivera, another Puerto Rican kid out of Connecticut. I win that fight. On that same card, Tim Sylvia was fighting. And Tim Sylvia knocked out his guy into a coma. They had to take him out on a stretcher in an ambulance. So Kip Kohler comes to me at the end of the things, and he's like, hey, would you be interested in fighting Tim Sylvia? And, you know, I was 25 at the time. I was a fucking moron. I was like, yeah, I'll do it. You know, I just wanted to fucking see how good I was. So I go see Jason, and I'm like, you know, I show Jason the videos. He sees Tim knocking this guy out and fucking him up. And I say to Jason, I'm going to fight him next. So Jason says to me, "You want to know what it's gonna feel like to fight him?" And I go, "Yeah." He beat my ass for 7 fucking minutes, dude. Because back then it was a straight 7 minute fight. So he beat my ass. I'm talking about he beat me up. Like it was he beat me up. He beat me up for 7 minutes. And then he says to me, that's what it's gonna be like to fight him. So in my mind, once again, I'm like, well, fuck it. I already got it from you. I'm gonna see if I can get it from him. So I go into that fight and I ended up beating him. I ended up beating Tim in that fight. Went back
That was
home.
kind of like an underground legend kind of fight too. You know what
Yep.
I mean? You got
Yep.
props for it. Tim sometimes denied it.
Yeah. No, it's on video, man. It's on video. Yeah. Videos out there. So, after that, I started hooking up with Keith. We're training with Keith, and he would bring guys in. Matt Lee was there. Jimmy Hattori was there. Nuri Shakir was there. There was a bunch of guys there, and I don't want to forget anybody. I don't want to be,
Mikey Brown.
Mikey Brown. I gotta forget Mike fucking Brown. Oh my god, Mikey Brown was there. We had a good stable of guys, and we were all training there. My first MMA fight with gloves on was with Brandon Lee Hinkle. That was a Jamie Levine fight. This was in Creighton, West Virginia.
Let me take it back. Let me give Keith Raquel his final credit too, because he's a guy that not a lot of people are going to remember, but he deserves a lot of credit because you said he helped you out a lot. He started showing up at our hook and shoot events in Indiana.
Yeah,
and
I remember that.
Looking back at it, especially for the early days, he competed. He raised the level of the show by competing, but he was also kind of like a show sponsor, under the table kind of thing, because he would fly his own team in. Like Mike Brown, he paid for his plane ticket to come on down the first time. We didn't have ticket money.
Keith is a real good dude, man. He's a kind and giving soul. He's a real good dude, man. I got nothing but good things to say. I got nothing but love for that guy. He's a good guy. He introduced me to a guy named Doug Kalenda. And I don't know if you know who Doug is, but Doug is somebody that I love to death. And I'll give you an idea of like what Doug was like. Doug would pay for my training. He would pay for my strength and conditioning coaches. He would fly out to my fights. Whoever was with me, he would buy us dinner. He would get offended if anybody even dared to fucking pay for it. You know what I mean? He would watch the fight and then he would take the red eye home. You know what I mean? This is the kind of guy, man. I mean, you talk about giving and not expecting anything back. I mean, what that man did for me, I will never be able to pay him back. But if he ever watches this, I fucking love you, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah, no, and Raquel falls under that category. Like I said, like he's basically sponsoring a small show in Indiana, because for the love of the sport, to test himself. I know that was part of it, But he bought out Brown. He never made you make the trip out there, but what he did was he hooked us up. He, making connections. He hooked us up with a jeweler guy named Tom Hapers, who I still appreciate as a person. And we did 3 shows. You look back at it, and we'll get back. We'll revisit this subject, but just to touch on how things were so crazy in the early days, George. You headlined, I think, all 3 of those shows. And
I might have. I don't know if I headlined the first one. I know I headlined 1 or 2.
Whatever the case was, I think it was the first one. Was in the Songus Arena, which is in what's the name of that town?
Lowell, Mass.
And who else is from Lowell, Massachusetts?
Mickey Ward.
And Mickey Ward fought Arturo Gatti that same day. So, when you wonder why the arena had nobody there, we had probably lost a battle against
Mickey
boxing,
Ward,
because he owned that town kind of thing. And I think, him going to Atlantic City, it's not too far. He took a lot of people down there with him. So kind of a crazy game. And you performed in front of 1,000 people in an 8,000 seat arena. So my hat's off to Tom. He put, that's called paying dues in the early days. Let's go back. West Virginia. And you're going to fight a West Virginia boy. And Brandon's almost like every cliche of a West Virginia boy, like a big old good old boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I remember going there. I was intimidated, right? I was intimidated just going there. I got there. I had nobody in my corner. Like the first day or 2 that I was there, Keith flew out, I believe, the day of the fight, and he brought Dennis Ciccone with him. But like the first day or two that I was there, I was by myself. And when I remember going to the weigh-in, and Brandon had Mark Coleman, Wes Sims. I mean, we're talking about Mark Coleman when Mark Coleman was in his fucking heyday. You know what I mean? I remember just looking at him, just shitting my pants, like, what the? And this is what I'm thinking, what the fuck am I getting into right now? You know what I mean? That's what's going through my mind. I'm like, what am I doing here? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So we go into that. Yeah, we go in there. We go into the fight. First couple minutes of the fight, it was fairly even. He was throwing wild haymakers left and right, hooks, and he was landing some. But I was able to land a good right hand on him, and he didn't want to trade anymore. He just fucking scooped me up over his head, and he went to slam me, and I caught the cage. And Dean Thomas was the referee, and he's like, "Let go of the cage," and I'm like, "Fuck that!" I'm not getting slammed here, dude. He ends up putting me on my back, and he beat me up so bad that I still carry some of the effects from that fight. Like sometimes when I look around, I see like spots in my eyes. I got those spots from that fight. They never left. He beat me up bad. I remember the concussion was horrible. I mean, my head hurt. I'm not even exaggerating, Miguel. I'm not even exaggerating. My head hurt for about a month. You know what I mean? That's how bad he beat me up.
Oh,
and
yeah.
when I got home, I got on the plane in Pittsburgh to fly home. And the lady next to me, she just looked at me. She was petrified. She's like, "What happened to you?" And I told her, I was like, "I fight professionally. I got beat up." She reaches into her purse, gives me her glasses, her sunglasses. She goes, "Put these on." You know what I mean? So I put them on. I go home. My brother picks me up. My brother Hugo. He picks me up and he's like, "Let me see your face." And I take off the glasses and he's like, "What the fuck?" He's like, "You sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got to book another fight."
Oh man.
You know, and he looks at me, and from that moment on, he was my biggest supporter. From that moment on, he was my biggest supporter. Like he knew I was serious about doing this, and he was a huge support for me. And I'm grateful for him for that too. He always stood by me. He believed in me. You know, he was the guy that believed in me. After that fight, I fought for Kip again. I fought in Springfield, and I ended up beating this kid up pretty bad. And I was trying to get into the UFC, and we started making calls, and that's when we hooked up with you guys.
Okay.
And then I started doing.
Yeah, the kid you fought Elias was is somewhere in there. You fought Brian Hawkins at the Fight Zone.
Brian Hawkins, God rest his soul. I fought him in Detroit. I forgot the guy's names. I think he's a Mexican dude. I forgot his name, man. But he flew us out. He flew out the whole team. The whole team from Team Elite, from Clinton. Every guy fought on that card. Jimmy Torrey fought, Matt Lee fought, Nuri fought, Keith fought, and I fought.
Sean Wilmot.
Yeah. I forgot about Sean, man. I forgot about Sean. Sean Wilmot too. That's right. Sean fought on that card.
Shout out to Sean for sure. And I'm looking through. I think that's all the guys there. Later on, there'd be other guys, but we'll get there. So you guys flew to Detroit. So you got a plane ticket in your third fight.
Yep. I'm gonna give you something that's been it was a little weird for me, that fight, because I Brian was a bigger dude than I was. He was around 220 and I was walking around 205. And it's weird, man, because he hit me with a punch and I felt like I was in a dream. I felt like I had dreamed this before. You know what I mean? It was the weirdest thing. Like, and while he's hitting me, I feel like I'm in a dream, and in my mind, I'm telling myself, "Don't get caught up in the dream, dude." Like, this is really happening. You know what I mean? Because in my mind, I was like trying to figure it out. I was like, "Is this real?" Like, I dreamt this before. That's exactly what I felt like. I was like, "I've been here before. I dreamt this before." You know, I'm trying to figure it out. As this guy's fucking hit me.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up knocking him out. You know what I mean? I ended up knocking Brian out. You're bringing things up to me that I have totally forgot about.
I know I haven't even brought it up. You just stream of consciousness is beautiful. Thank you very much for sharing a lot of that stuff because it's cool now.
Yeah.
And just so people are paying attention here, because one of the things now that we're 30 years down the line, you got to worry about, the brain injuries and things like that.
Yeah,
You experienced some, you fought Tim Sylvia, Brandon Lee Hinkle, and you said Brian Hawkins was 220. You were fighting big, hard hitting dudes from the very
yeah, dude.
beginning.
But we're talking about late '90s, really. It's not like it is now, brother. You know
Yeah.
this. Back in those days, it was like you want the people that wanted to scrap were limited. So it wasn't like you had this giant pool of people to choose from.
Yeah.
Right? You got fucking 10 guys. And then top it off, like I did this to test myself, to prove myself, you know what I mean? And to literally see how tough I was. So, I gotta fight tough fucking guys. This is exactly how I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. And now here we go with the Tom Hafer show, which is Ring of Fury. And you've
Yep.
got, we got a nice little run there. This is 2002, where I think Keith was the main event against Leo Dollar in
Yep.
the first one, and you were co-main event against Joe Nye.
Yep. I was supposed to fight a guy from Militich's place, but he ended up dropping out.
Okay. Yeah, I think
And
Nye's from up in Massachusetts in that area. Am I right?
yep. Joe's good people, man. I
Yeah.
talked to Joe on Facebook now. Joe's a good guy.
And shout out Mike Brown was on that card. We brought in Jason Maxwell,
Yeah. Jason, another good guy, man. I remember him too.
Jeremy Bennett, who was a tough kid who fought Aaron Riley for us as well. He fought Matt Lee. So this was a good card, and this was, like I said, and this is May. Yeah, unfortunately I think that this one we ran head on with in Lowell, Massachusetts against Gotti Ward, and even if people weren't down in Atlantic City, they probably watched that on TV because Ward was kind of an icon, and we weren't quite there yet, but it was
It,
definitely a
it
good
wasn't
show.
Yeah, it wasn't just that, Miguel. It was the fact that the sport was still in its infancy. And that
Yeah,
was the first sanctioned MMA fight in Massachusetts,
yeah,
closed fist fight. So people weren't even, and when people thought about it, they thought about cage fighting and it had a stigma to it. We were fighting, it wasn't just the Mickey, we were fighting a bunch of different things. It wasn't as
yeah,
popular as it is now. And people looked at us like fucking savages, you know what I mean? Like a bunch of
yeah.
morons that go in there trying to kill each other.
And I gotta hand it to you. I was the matchmaker. I gotta hand it to that boxing commission for what's good, what's bad. They're not a huge commission. They don't have Nevada's funding, for example, and stuff. But they were as by the book and as good people because they gave us a shot. We did 3 shows there under their supervision. They didn't even they had no problems with us either, and they actually sanctioned the event. We kind of made a little bit of history there. I remember what we were on the first show. Me and my guy were going to go over the arrival list from the airport. And one of the commissioners said, "Can I come with you?" And the guy wouldn't even let me buy him coffee. You know what I mean? And that's what a
Yeah,
true.
because then it looks like
Yeah. Now keep in mind,
impropriety.
after that, later on, I ran, in 7 other commissions, and all the commissioners hit you up for tickets and blah 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 blah. Massachusetts had really none of that, so I do appreciate it. I guess they were just as afraid as we were. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
Now the second show with Tom, my hat's off to him. Tom really, put his all into this, and this was you headlining against Travis Luter for the hook and shoot title, which at the
Yep.
time was a pretty meaningful, underground kind of belt.
Yeah, it meant a lot to me. Yeah, I mean, Travis was a stud. And here's a backstory. Travis was in town to go to a wedding of another Machado black belt. That guy's name is Tim Burrell. After Travis and I were on the Ultimate Fighter show together, Travis hooked me up with Tim Burrell. Tim Burrell became my jiu-jitsu coach, and I trained under Tim Burrell. He's still my coach. I love him, respect him to the death of me. But Tim is my guy, and I ended up meeting Tim through Travis, and Travis was in town to go to Tim's wedding.
Yeah.
That same day.
Man, I'll tell you, that's how you know that George Rivera is a genuine guy, because I thought you were going to tell the story because you met someone pretty famous that same day.
Dana was in
Yeah.
town.
Dana caught that fight live, which was you and Luter, which was pretty much, it was about as epic a fight as you're going to get at that level at that time.
That was a good fight. That was a good fight.
and he got to see that, and you both signed, after that. Talk a little bit about meeting Dana, and how that, what that interaction was like, and when you heard from them again.
It was a bit surreal, like everything else. I didn't expect to see him there. I know Dina's a Boston guy as well, and a little starstruck, a little bit in awe. It was cool. It was cool. And that's another thing, Miguel. We're talking about 2000, 2002. We're not talking about 2023.
He wasn't as big as he is now.
Yeah, he wasn't on TV. He wasn't none of that shit. Only the hardcore guys like us were really in tune because we loved it. We loved the sport. So it was cool watching the guy who was the face of the UFC at the time, he still is, the face of the UFC, being at our fight. And not only being at our fight, but we entertained him. He loved the fight. And that was huge too.
But and that counted. You did, at this point, you don't have too many fights, but now you got a pretty decent underground belt. I don't want to hype my belt too much, but you got
a pretty
nice belt. We got it like a $3,000 belt made, so it was a nice belt.
Yep.
And you got the attention of Dana. Travis, a good opponent. You guys gave it your all in there. So talk about what you remember, how that fight ended, because I remember when you came in, you already had the whole Conquistador
headpiece.
The
chainmail.
The chainmail headpiece and stuff like that. Awesome stuff, and the flag, and you had it all going on, brother.
I appreciate that, man. No, I my brother and I, my older brother Hugo, when he wanted to give me retarded fight names. I was like, nah, dude, I don't want to do any of those things. And he was like, well, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want something that's going to reflect our Puerto Rican heritage. I want something that when people see it and hear it, they know that I'm representing Puerto Rico. And I started looking through things, and I was thinking about Taínos, that's the native Indian of the island, and other things. And when he brought the chainmail to me, I was like, that's, to me, it was instant. I'm a conquistador. I put this on, and I'm going to go to war. This is what I am. That's the name that I want. And that's what I rolled with.
Yeah, no. And so your brother Hugo is responsible for the piece?
Yep. He was a huge pro wrestling fan. He was a huge pro wrestling fan. And at the time, Scott Steiner was wearing it. Big Papa Pump. And we were big fans because that guy's talk game is off the charts. And we would die laughing at some of the shit he would say. Plus, he was jacked up and he would wear this friggin' chainmail. It looked cool. You know what I mean? So when he brought it to me, I was like, yeah, man, I still got that thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's in my closet.
That's interesting. Why would it be in your closet? Why don't you have it like on a fake head, like in your living room or something?
I got a bunch of things in my closet from way back in the day, from MMA things. I got a rubber ducky that's signed by the cast of Tough 4, and that was in 06. It took 17 years ago. I still have these things.
Yeah, for sure. That's a lot of guys have that, meaningful stuff. I may be able to help you out with some of that if you want to get in the museum or put it somewhere where it's going to be cared for, because maybe your kids care for it, maybe not.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'll give it to them, let them do whatever they want. I really don't hold on to much of that. I've given most of it away. When I had my gym back in Massachusetts, I had a wall that was framed with all my fight shorts and shirts, and it had the guy who did it for me did an outstanding job. It had the fight, the day of the fight, the UFC card, the whole fucking nine. I gave all that stuff away, dude. I kept like 1 or 2 of them. I don't hold. It doesn't. I don't have a sentimental value to it. I don't hold on to it.
There was a lot of the guys from that generation seem to have that story. I'll share one with you. Fred Edish, who fought in UFC 2, he went home, washed that gi, and wore it Monday at the school. You know what I mean? and then wore it out, and a few years later threw it out.
Yeah.
So it's crazy stuff. But yep. So, but let's pick it up here, because now, the third of the Ring of Furies is going to go down, and this was actually one of those shows that I remember because it was in an old nightclub across the street, literally across the street from the Green Monster, the Boston's Fenway
Yep.
Park.
It
And
was at Venus.
yeah, but it had this nightclub goes back. Was it the Avalon in the early days, 1960s? Like, the Grateful
It might
Dead
have
place.
been.
You
I
know,
knew I
so
knew it as Venus.
so yeah, it's gone through some additions and stuff, but I think it's one of those kind of historic clubs at the time. For that kind of thing. And we did a show in there with that, and you headlined fighting Solomon Hutcherson, a guy who would
Yep.
later show up on Tough. What do you remember about that fight?
I remember being in the back when they were giving the instructions and everything before the fights. And I remember the referee saying, if you get caught in a submission hold and you tap or you scream, the fight's over. Right? So the fight starts. Solomon starts throwing me. I'll give him credit, man. That motherfucker threw me around that cage the first. I mean, he picked me up, slammed me. I got up, he threw me. You know what I mean? And then he started landing bombs. But I spun around. I caught him either in a triangle armbar or just a regular armbar. And I started cranking on it. And he yelled. So when he yelled, and the referee was in the corner, when he yelled, I let it go. I get up. I think the fight's over. And he's like, nah, I didn't tap this. And I was like, motherfucker, you screamed. You know what I mean? They told us in the back when fucking shit like this happens, the fight's over. The referee's looking confused, and I'm like, fuck it. Let's continue fighting. You know what I mean? So we get up in the clinch, and I remember giving him a left shoulder shrug and pull him back with the right hand and knocking him out. You know what I mean? I remember the shoulder shrug might have taken his attention off what I really wanted to do. So I gave him like a shoulder shrug, came back with the right hand, knocked him out.
Yeah.
And then, I was at home. I had a good crowd there for me. Started going nuts and cheering, all that good shit.
And that's the good part too. That it's funny because at the Sangas, you didn't I remember you coming in and stuff, but it was a light crowd. There were the building wasn't full, and even though this other place is a nightclub, it was full and packed, and you kind of get the impact of the crowd and stuff. And it was
we did it backwards, Miguel. We did it backwards. We should have done it in that club the first two, build up a following, then go to the big place.
Yeah, we gotta get Tom. We gotta get Tom.
Hindsight is 2020, man.
Exactly, and try not to run on the same day as Mickey Ward.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
So now this is interesting. So at US MMA 2, you fought Travis Lutter. You took the belt. You performed in front of Dana White. Now you get the call. It's UFC 44, and I believe that's going to be. So how did this come about? How did you find out you got in to the UFC?
I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Keith Raquel.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Keith Raquel. And I remember getting the call, and I was fucking excited, man. It was going to be in September against David Loazu. I got the call like in June. So I had a couple months to prepare for it. And that's when I started training and doing all this.
Yeah.
This is what I was from the very beginning, from Hoist Gracie. This was the dream. I didn't have aspirations for championships. I just wanted to make it to the show. And when I got that call, I had accomplished my goal. I fucking made it. And then once I get there, then it's like, holy shit, what am I going to do now? You know what I mean? I'm here. You know what I mean? Where does this go from here? And then I was like, well, let's see if I can fight for a title here, and it's a different animal fighting against that level of competition. It's
Now you got a 15 fight run in with the UFC, and at the end of the day, you left with a winning record in the company. And so hats off to putting in the work all around. Let's take it step by step here, because on this first show, a couple of things. So now you get there. First of all, interesting. Tim Sylvia's on the card.
I think he might have been champion by then.
He fought Gam McGee, so we had Arlovsky and Couture. Couture fought Ortiz on that card.
Yeah,
you had Franklin, a future opponent, on the card. So definitely a lot of. You remember any interactions with that? How was your first show? What was that like? Because obviously you must have felt, even by this is Zuffa already. They're not what they are now, but by now you definitely felt this is different than the Ring of Fury.
Oh yeah, dude, the whole production. And there was a lot of people there from the West Coast. I remember that. I remember seeing a bunch of guys that I would see on YouTube there and on these videos, and I was like, holy shit, there goes this guy. There goes, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
I'm starstruck. You know what I mean? I remember
Really?
seeing Dean Lister there. He was a guy that I was like, oh, this is the guy, you know what I mean? This is the
Mhm.
guy that submits all these guys. And I was starstruck, you know what I mean? I was like, holy shit, all these guys are here. You know, and
Now,
then running into the Militech crew. And at that time the Militech crew was running shop. You know what I mean? They were fucking kicking ass and taking names, and seeing that whole group of guys, and then seeing Randy, who I absolutely idolized. You know what I mean? I remember watching his first UFC fight. I thought he was just the fucking greatest. You know, and then seeing Matt Lindland there, everything, dude, the whole thing. I was like, holy shit, I'm playing ball for the Red Sox. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm in the big leagues, man. Holy shit, I'm here.
Now, how'd you beat Loazo? What do you remember about that fight? How'd you avoid, being, you know, you know, dropping your
I remember
first
it's
fight?
just a stand up fight, and believe it or not, I think that was the most relaxed I've ever been for any fight. I was very, very relaxed. And we fought most of the fight in the clinch. He split my head open in the first round. I go to the corner, and I didn't know how bad it was until I looked up into the big screen. I was like, oh shit. And Stitch Duran was in my corner, and Stitch was able to patch me up. And from that day on, man, Stitch was my guy. Every time I went to the fights, I only wanted to deal with Stitch. You know, and I realized afterwards it wasn't just me, it was everyone.
Yeah,
Everyone, because he's just a guy that can relate to the fighters so well. You know, and he's a man's man, dude. He's a guy that you want to be around. He's
it's a pro.
straightforward. He's a pro, man. He's a pro. So I remember helping me out, and I remember David came over that fight. He came in like 8 pounds over. So as the fight was progressing, he was gassing. You know, and
Okay,
that's how I won that fight, man. He ended up gassing out, and I ended up just beating him.
okay.
Then I went to the
Now,
hospital. I don't know if you can see that, but I got my head all stitched up. Came
how
back from
many
the hospital.
how many stitches did that take?
Got like 12, 13. Yeah, 12 or
No
13
concussion,
stitches.
or you had another concussion?
Honestly, Miguel, I'm gonna be dead honest with you. This, I've been concussed so many times that some of the times I'm concussed, I don't know it.
Yeah, yeah. No,
You know what I mean?
you sound terrific in this interview, and obviously we got good memories and stuff like that. But I always worry about that. But you know my guy. He fought in one of those Massachusetts shows. Keith Wisniewski. Wisniewski said to me, he goes, counting training, I probably caught 200 concussions, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and there are guys that are more susceptible to it too. So,
It's not
more
just
power.
that. It's like once you start getting knocked out, it gets easier and easier to get knocked out. You know, it's
Mhm.
not a good thing. It's not a good thing.
Yeah. Yep. So now, you get through Loazo. Loazo's a hard hitter, but you got your thing going. And now the next show, this is probably going to be a step up a little bit in terms of this is Mandalay Bay and Nevada and that boxing commission for the first time. You got Vitor and Couture in the main event, and you're taking on the notorious Lee Murray. Notorious before Connor, we had Lee Murray.
Yep, yep.
What was this like?
Honestly, I'm not taking anything away from Lee. That was his night. He would have won that fight no matter what. But going into that fight, I was shook. You know what I mean? All the rumors about his power, and as a fighter, you gotta stay off the fucking internet and listening and reading what other people are saying about your opponents. And that was a learning curve for me too, because I was afraid to get hit by him. You know what I mean? I can honestly say that now. And then when he did hit me, I was like, that's not that fucking hard. You know what I mean? But in my head, I had already forfeited this shit. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? It was a
Now,
learning. It was one to learn from.
he's British, and the British guy, obviously, everybody knows that he's doing time right now, and we won't go into that story. But British guys travel with fight fans and stuff. Did you have any incidents in Vegas or anything like that where just toothless British guys screaming in your face or something could be daunting?
Nah, it wasn't. Once again, it was. This is 2003, no, 2004. This is when the
Yeah,
Patriots won the Super Bowl.
yeah, 2004.
Yeah, it was 2004. And once again, it wasn't as big as it is now. And he may have had a following there, but it wasn't the following that he would have now. And especially a guy with his charisma and stuff, if he were to be fighting now, he'd be a huge star.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll see if we ever hear from him again. I think he's scheduled to get out relatively soon at this point. He's been in for a long time. So, at any rate, let's get back on track. So Lee Murray, he submits you. How talk about that? What went on there? Just the intimidation factor?
Yeah, it wasn't that. He caught me. He caught me in a I think it was a triangle armbar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay. All right. Now let me you leave the UFC. Now, how was it? At that point you were probably doing one fight deals with the UFC, like one at a time, or did they cut you? Did you get a phone call? How did that go?
No, it was one fight deals. Um, I lost that fight, and then I went to, I believe it was my next fight was in Cage Rage, and that was in July, I think, against Mark Weir.
Yeah, I think the James Gabert fight you snuck in April, and then in July you fought Mark.
Oh, that's right, that's right. James Gaber. I fought him at the Songus Arena too.
Okay, yeah. And so yeah, so that you kind of a return home, you get your W, you're the main event there again. Another one of those local shows. Hopefully they did better than we did. And
That
then
that
you
kid was tough, man. James Gaber kid, he was a lot shorter than I was. That kid was tough. He could take a beat and keep fucking walking at you.
yeah, no, that was an entertaining fight. But then now you get, is it your first time overseas?
My
To go
second,
second?
my,
Okay.
my first time was in I think it was 2001. I fought for Cage Warriors, a guy named Dougie. I forgot
Okay.
Dougie's last name.
Yep. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. I know you're talking about.
I
So
think it was Truman. I think it was Dougie Truman.
okay.
I'm not positive, man, but his name was Dougie. He was the guy running Cage Warriors.
Yeah.
And I met one of your guys out there, one of the guys from Hook and Shoot. I forgot his name, dude. He was a young dude. He ended up joining the Navy. But he had fought in Hook and Shoot a bunch of times.
Okay.
And him and I hooked up there, and we ended up cornering one another.
Oh, Chris Bunsen?
No, it wasn't Chris. I forgot his name.
Because Chris
He was a
Munson,
wrestler.
Chris is the guy that uh Travis beat for that belt. So
Yeah.
are you thinking about Scott Hensey?
No, he was a younger guy. He was like 19, 20 years old. He was
Okay.
a wrestler. I forgot his name, dude. I forgot his name. I apologize.
Not
But he
Aaron
was a
Ryan.
hook. He was a hook and shoot guy.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll look at it here in a little bit. So, but talk about the experience of going to England. Mark Weir, also a quality guy, good striker. Uh, what was that? What was that fight like?
I got to give Mark Weir a lot of props, man. I had studied Mark Weir. I knew he was quick. And he had speed. I knew he had good kicks. But when he threw that kick at me, dude, I was. This is what I'm telling you. I'm prepared for that kick. I still didn't see it coming. You know what I mean? He hit me with it. I was like, "What the fuck?"
Mm-hmm.
And then he hit me with like 4, 5, 6, 7 punches. I just grabbed him. I grabbed him. I took him down, and I ended up hurting him on the mat. Like I landed a couple of good solid shots to his eye, and his eye was swollen shut. He couldn't see out of it, so they stopped the fight. Had they not stopped the fight, I would have lost that fight because I was completely gassed. I was jet lagged. I hadn't slept good. It wouldn't have been good for me. So I was fortunate to finish him in the first round.
Yeah, Mark is a tough guy too. That he made the trip to Indiana at one point too. So,
Yeah.
Now you get back to the UFC, and now you're going to be on the short list of guys fighting top level guys. The first guy here, you've already fought some top level guys, but the first guy here, Rich Franklin, in what becomes a run that's pretty dangerous here. So, what do you remember about the Rich Franklin fight?
I remember Rich came a couple pounds in overweight, and Dana was like, "Hey, I forgot what the conversation was exactly like, but I was like, fuck it, I'll fight him. Rich came into that cage. I come in, I weigh in at 185. This is, I think I'm a big guy. I weigh in at 185. I come into the fight weighing about 200. This fucking guy is weighing 218. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Fucking huge. I remember grabbing him by the neck and thinking to myself, what the this guy was huge. He wasn't just big, he was built strong as fuck. Rich is props to Rich, man. Rich is a fucking animal. He's a stud.
Yeah, I mean,
But
he held it out for a long time, and so this is one of those things. How'd the fight come about? How did UFC call you again? Was it the late replacement shot? First time you had a couple months to warm up for it, not this one. How'd that go?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah. Like I don't remember, man. We're talking this is 2004. It's almost 20
Now,
years ago, brother.
this was also UFC 50, kind of a memorable show. The show itself, I think you were a late replacement. And I think Tito also.
Let's put it in proper perspective, right? We're at UFC 289 right now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think what happened is Tito was supposed to have a main event that fell apart. I forget who the opponent was.
He was going to fight. He was going to fight Guy Metzger, and Guy had a stroke.
Okay, and
the guy had a stroke. So
Cote stepped in. And
Yep.
I think Cote was originally scheduled to fight Franklin, and that's why you may have gotten that call.
Maybe I honestly I can't say I don't know.
Okay, yeah, it's speculation, but so Franklin's strong. We knew that. So they let you go back to England. You fight Alex Reed, another one of their guys there, and you get him out pretty quick. What do you remember about the Alex Reed fight?
My family flew out with me. My brother and a couple friends flew out. We were planning on going to Amsterdam after the fight, and my cousins, they're street kids. You know what I mean? They don't. That's the only way I can. That's the best way I can put it to you. So we show up, and Alex Reed comes out in a pair of tight shorts that are sequenced. You know what I mean? And my cousin yells to me. My cousin yells to me in Spanish. I can't say it all because we're living in a real politically correct world right now. But more or less, he was like, "If you lose to this fairy, don't ever come home."
Yeah,
I'll never forget that. You know what I mean? And I was just, and I ended up knocking him out within a minute. You know what I mean? I knocked him out pretty good.
It went your way, and it feels good to travel though, like to be able to take your family, especially at the time when you're not making a lot of money still or anything like that. Any perk like that, feels,
You know what? I'm going to be honest with you. The guys over there, it was Dave and Andy, and those guys treated me really, really good. I have nothing but love and respect for those two gentlemen. I mean, they took good care of me. They paid me fairly. You know what I mean? I was probably making more with them than what I was with the Big Show at the time. You know what I mean? They were paying me well. So I was grateful.
Let me. Some people will argue that you're forgetting that they put you in with Anderson Silva next, so maybe they weren't taking care of you that much. But
no, I asked for the fight.
Point, you felt like you were in the neighborhood. I mean, obviously, you were one of the best guys in the world around this time. Did you have confidence going into that fight?
I mean, like I told you, I was a bit starstruck. I had watched Anderson fight in Pride, and I knew what he was about. I knew he was part of Shooter Box. You know what I mean? I had seen his style. You know what I mean? I knew what I was getting into with him. I thought, anyways. You know what I mean? And that was a really. After that fight, it was a very humbling experience. He beat me up pretty good. He picks me up after the fight. He hugs me and he says to me, "Hey, if you ever want to come to Brazil and train with me, you can come stay with me." Years go by. It's at a UFC fight. I forgot which one it was. One of my last ones. And I was sitting down all by myself alone, and fighters are with their camps or whatever. And Anderson goes out of his way to come over and say what's up to me and talk to me for a minute. I mean, that goes to speak the kind of a person that Anderson is, man. I mean, that's a solid dude, man.
Yeah,
I got nothing but love and respect for him.
Yeah, that's a respect move. Obviously, you earned your respect with him, or else, he might have left you, sitting in Hall alone.
Dude,
So it says
Miguel, he
something.
had me in a tie plum, right? He's got me by my neck and head, and he's got his forearms in a way where I can't get a clean shot on him, but I can still hit him. And I got a pretty good right hand. I hit him with about 4 or 5 shots. He fucking looks at me and he winks at me, and then he hits me with an elbow.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a master.
This dude looked at me and winked at me like, "Man, nice shot." Hey, how's this taste?
Man, that's amazing. That's amazing. So it's now, dude, you caught him before obviously the UFC run and stuff. At that point, we everybody on our level kind of knew he was special anyway. But how does it feel like you're watching his career progress and like I know you love the guy and you're gonna root for him and stuff, but did you ever have one of those moments where you were with family watching a huge fight with him and you're like, yeah, I fought that guy. There's very few people that share that what you guys share.
Yeah, no, my wife was actually out there with me for that fight. I got to go inside because my battery's dying. So bear
Okay.
with me a second.
Yep.
My wife flew out with me for that fight. This is when we first started dating. So she had met him. She had seen him. My younger brother was there with me too. He was there for that fight. So they all got to meet him, and talk to him for a minute while we were out there. So that was cool too.
So now, as we're progressing through the career here, and it looks like you're going back for a smaller show. You fought a guy named Danny Vega in Massachusetts, and then went back to England to fight Marcelo Acevedo. Um, talk about those two fights because after that you got a call for the.
Well, the Danny fight was a fight that I just wanted to stay active, and let the UFC know I'm still out here. It was a fight I should have won. It wasn't a quality opponent, and that's no disrespect to him. It is what it is.
Yeah, no,
And then I
level.
fought, yeah. Then I fought Marcelo, who was a savage black belt in jiu-jitsu, man. Really, really good jiu-jitsu. But I was training. I was doing tons of jiu-jitsu. I was able to. He was another guy that he was flying from Brazil to England, and I'm pretty sure that was his first time, and he had a hard time adapting. So, the first round he was a savage, but then he sets the gas out, and I beat him up pretty bad. Back in those days, they had the open guard rule, where it was similar to Pride, where you could do head stomps, and I stepped on his face 2 or 3 times, man. I was able to hurt him.
So at that point, now you beat Marcelo Acevedo in Cage Rage 13. This is in September of 2005, and you move in. It's basically a month later. Dennis Hallman, UFC 55. Talk about that.
Was getting a call back. It was a fight that, in hindsight, I played it too safe. I should have finished him in the second round. I had him hurt in the first. Going into the second, I had him hurt. I should have finished. You know what I mean? And knowing that I had won the first 2 rounds, I kind of coasted the third and let it go to a decision. I remember going into the back and Joe Silva being heated. When I say pissed off, he was pissed. He was like, I was happy that I had won. I was like, you can't, I'm not going to get cut. I won the fight. He was like, I should cut you anyways. You should have finished them. What kind of shit is that? Blah, blah. And in the moment, I was kind of a little butthurt because I couldn't see his perspective. Mm-hmm. Looking back now, I'm like, I understand. I know where he's coming from, and he was in the right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the stories like that add up about a person, and I know Joe. I have no doubt he understood fights and had a perspective he wanted, but sometimes, he communicated with everyone the same way, which was kind of talking down to him. And that does, you could be a better communicator. I think you could send that message without shitting on people.
Yeah, well, he's not really talking down when he's that short. He's got to be talking up.
I'm glad you said that. That's good. So now, Allman, tough guy. You go to a decision. No shame in that. Next up, in January of 2006, you get Chris Lieben. Now, this isn't the Lieben. This is Lieben coming off of the TV show kind of thing, where he really didn't look that great on the TV show. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean, he was a
yeah.
tough guy, but I think he lost a couple of fights, and then when they had to do the finals for him, they actually brought in the kid from Canada who wasn't really a fighter to fight him. And, you know, Chris got a little bit of a nudge at the beginning of his career with Randy helping him and stuff. So how did this fight come about? And, you know, how do you feel about it?
At the moment when I had that fight, I was upset. I was upset losing that fight. I had thought that they had stopped it too early. Um, and I got in touch, and he landed like one or two shots on me, and I stood right back up. But it is what it is. I mean, Big John saw it one way, and he's one of the best in the business at doing his job, and you got to respect the call. You know, it was a fight that I wish I could have. I wish I could have had over. You know what I mean? Even if the results would have been the same, I just think I could have performed a lot better than that.
Now,
You know,
you know, bearing in mind, you know, Lieben's a guy who went on to have a terrific career and some great moments and stuff. But at this point, he's still raw. Were you favored in that fight? Did you? I mean, you had to be going in there confident.
I don't know if I was favored. I was confident. You know, I mean, I was. You
Yeah.
know, I just remember it was in the Hard Rock. It was a small show. I get bits and pieces from every fight. That fight was the first time I had ever met Boss Rutan, and I was a
Okay.
huge fan of Boss Rutan. So that was a cool experience. You know, that's what I remember most about that fight. I remember that in the main event, Tim Sylvia had shotted himself. That's the other thing I remember from that card. He fought a
Oh,
Cyril Silva, and he ended
yeah,
up shotting himself. Those are
yeah.
the things I remember from that card.
So your payday was very unmemorable, huh?
I don't remember
Yeah,
it.
yeah. But what are you making? Are you making 10-10 at this point? Like, is that
No,
possible?
I wasn't even making that. Might
Okay,
have been like 8-8.
okay. We had Tim Williams pop up at another one of those Massachusetts shows that they let you do, and then you went back to UFC. This time you got Edwin DeWeese, and Edwin, you know, is a guy who's on the West Coast been paying his dues for a long time too, though. You know what I mean?
Yep.
What do you remember of that fight?
Edwin was my roommate on the show. So him and I, we were cool. You know what I mean? It's a different thing when you're fighting somebody that you actually cool with. You have you know them. Not
Yeah.
like we're kicking on the corners or whatever, but we shared a room for a month and a half. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you get to know the person. It was different. You know what I mean? I remember you enjoy the victory, but it's still not as cool as beating up somebody that you don't care about.
Yeah, yeah. Now let
If
me
that
ask
makes
you:
any sense.
are you a little sore at the UFC production, or why would they make that fight?
Well, we were coming off the show. You know what I mean? So it's you have to fight somebody in the fucking house, and it was gonna be somebody I knew regardless, but he was my roommate. You know what I mean? It was somebody that and it's you got what do we have? You have 8 fighters, you got 4 fights you have to make. I mean, it is what it is.
Okay, and so that one went well. Now the next one, you come back and you get 3 months. Terry Martin is your opponent, and at this point, this is probably a setback. Why don't you talk about what happened here?
I totally underestimated this guy. It was a huge mistake. But I was really confident at the time. I had spent some really good training. I had been, I had already hooked up with Tim Burrell at the time, so my jiu-jitsu was coming along, and I just felt that's a fight I felt I should have won. You know what I mean? I landed the first kick, and I knew I had landed it well, and I knew it hurt him just by the look on his face when I landed it. I go to throw the second kick, and as I'm winding up the kick, in my head, I was going to throw a low kick, but in my head, I was like, all right, let's just throw it high. And it came out weak. So he ended up grabbing the kick. He landed a good shot to my temple, knocking me out. Then when I was on the ground, he landed like 3 or more 4 shots, and he broke my jaw in 2 places. So I was out for a year. I got titanium plates and 4 screws in my jaw. And I didn't fight again until a whole year later when I fought Kendall Grove.
Now, how does that happen? Obviously, in the fight, so the UFC has to take care of that medical stuff. How was that experience? Did you have any worries, or
That
was it?
sucked, Miguel. That's a great question to ask. That sucked. Because I fought on Saturday. My jaw was, I'm not even exaggerating. I got pictures, man. It was out to here. It was so swollen. It was ridiculous. People would come into, Kenny Florian came into my room to check up on me. And when he saw my face, he did one of those, like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? I knew it was bad. Sunday comes around and they don't want me to wait till Monday in Vegas. So they fly me home. You know what I mean? I'm fucking on a jet plane with a broken jaw and my face is out to here. And I'm doped out on friggin' hydro perks. I'm perked out. I'm perked out all the way home. I land, I go see a dentist because the dentist has to fix my jaw, and I don't get surgery for another 2 or 3 days. Then when I do get my surgery, my jaw's wired. There's a lot of pain, man. That's what I remember the most. I've broken my arm. I've had a fractured skull. I've broken my hands. I've had a few breaks. Nothing even comes close to the pain of a broken jaw. It was excruciating pain, dude.
Yeah.
It's
Now let
something
me
I'll
ask you:
never forget.
a lot of people, when you get the wired shut, like you could have a panic attack. You can't talk, you can't eat, you can't do anything. It's like there
Yeah,
are people who pulled out the stuff, man. That's a very trying time.
I've
Aaron
done
Rodgers,
that. I've done that. Then I started eating when I wasn't supposed to. But I was just like, man, fuck this. It's like,
yeah,
you can only do it for so long. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So I was breaking the rules as soon as I could. And at that time, I had just opened up an MMA gym, and I was part owner of it. So I had I wanted to be busy in the gym. So I
yeah,
was, giving people pad work, and these are new guys learning learning how to fight. Sometimes they would miss the pad and just miss my face. You know what I mean? That would send me into a panic. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, this fucking guy's gonna, if he hits me in my fucking face, and now I'm fighting for a living. You know what I mean? So the gym is making me the money and stuff like that, but I just want to fight. You know what I mean? And that was the only thought in my mind. I was like, if this gets worse, I'll probably never fight again. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I didn't want that. So that was a rough 7 or 8 months.
yeah. Now let me ask you: you fought 11 months after the injury. Do you almost feel like you rush back because of finances and stuff like that too? Are you kind of still playing loose with your health?
A little bit, a little bit. What I mean, the finances were definitely an issue. And I remember when I went to go fight Kendall. Kendall is a big guy. He's got this long reach. If you ever
Yeah,
watch that fight, he throws a hook that misses my face, and that's when I was like, "Fuck that!" I fucking closed the distance and took him down.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And then I was able to put him in a position where I could land hard shots. And
hmm,
once I landed the first one, because his head was up against the mat, I could hear the thud.
yeah,
Doom, doom. I landed 2 of them in a row, and I knew I had hurt him. So I just kept the pressure on him. You know what I mean? And then as I hit him more, he started making bad decisions.
yeah.
He curled up and so and so and so, and I ended up knocking him out.
Now, so that's kind of a spectacular way back. The kind of win you look, if you've been off and you have an injury, you want to send a message on your way back. This is almost exactly the kind of message you want to send. You know, better than taking shots and hey, yeah, I was able to take them. No, this was exactly what you want to get in and out quickly, don't you think?
It was a good fight for me. I performed well that night. I was happy with my performance. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
now it's 2008. Now I'm 2 years into training full time with Tim. I was with Mark Delagrati at the time, and Mark had a good camp. He had a bunch of guys. They had a bunch of killers there. He had Marcus Davis, Kenny Florian. He had Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffith coming in and out. There were people coming in and out of the gym. So it was a good atmosphere. It was a good environment to be training in. So it was, and training with guys like that builds confidence. So I felt good. After that fight, it was like June of 2008. I was fighting Martin Kampman.
Yeah.
And this is where Mark Delagrati and I parted ways. It was like,
and what happened there? Why, when you talk about,
it's both he and I. You know what I mean? He believes one thing, I believe another. He wants to train me one way, and I'm a hard-headed guy, man. You know what I mean? And that's another thing, is like, as I'm going through the experience, I have a hard time taking another person's perspective. I can only see it through my eyes. I mean, especially with the passion that I had. So, and I knew he meant well, but it was at a point where it was best for both of us to do our own things. So I ended up leaving him, and that's when I hooked up with Peter Welch. And Peter's the fucking man. Peter understood me, and he trained me in a way that I like to be trained. You know what I mean? And he wasn't so much trying to change the way that I was. He was trying to fine tune the way that I was to make it work for me. He knew I like to brawl. He knew my style of fighting, and he just gave me advice and tips to make that work the best for me.
Now, when you beat Grove, you said that was a good performance for you. Now, after that, you fought Martin Kampman, and Martin is good with his submissions, and he got your. Who were you? Was that your last fight with Delagrate, or was this your first fight with the new team?
That was my last fight with Mark, and and we're in the back room. I'm getting ready to walk out, and Mark and I are literally fighting with each other.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're literally fuck you, back and forth. And I'm walking now. Now I'm walking out to the cage.
Yeah.
It wasn't a good look. It wasn't good for either one of us.
No, I mean, once the cage closes, you're alone in there, but that
you're taking everything with you. Like that energy is with you.
Yeah, and that plus, you've been together so long, there's so much baggage, you're worrying about years earlier, it's crazy. Yeah. I feel for you, because the other thing is Delagrate is a guy who, he's earned respect. It's not like, you were shedding a bum either. He was good.
Right.
Definitely painful.
Yeah.
So there you take a loss, but now you come back. Now you're with the UFC. This seems to be, you took off almost 10 months here, but you went right back to the UFC. Are you on a contract at this point, or are you still going back to fight?
My daughter passed away about 2 months after that.
Oh.
So I was in a real dark place for a long time.
Oh gosh. Do you want to share a little bit about that? What was it, an accident or sickness?
No, she was on birth control pills, and the birth control pills. 100,000 women die a year on birth control pills. I was not aware of that until her passing. 100,000 women a year die from birth control pills. So she was on these things, and it ended up taking her life. So that was a rough. Yeah, man, that was a rough time.
Yeah.
So they gave me my space and time, and when I felt I was ready to come back, I came back.
Yeah. Now, do you keep track of the UFC fighters and stuff like that nowadays? Or did you see Walt Harris had a tragedy with his daughter that was pretty public?
Yeah, I saw that.
What goes through your mind with, there's a guy, maybe the only other guy who could possibly understand you. You know what I mean?
Nick Catone lost his son too, man.
Oh man.
He lost his son to the vaccines.
Oh God.
So it's something you don't wish upon anyone, man. But when you see it happen to other people, it's just, you can relate to it. You just want to reach out. You know what I mean? Man.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal stuff. And how do you get yourself together to come back? Does she become like an inspiration or a motivation for you? Because a lot of people might call it quits, and or so in some cases, you may not find that fire again. You know what I mean?
No, I had two young girls at the time. I started a new family, so I got to pick up the pieces, and that's something I think about her every day, dude. So she's, you know,
Well, no, you got to carry on, and yeah, it becomes an inspiration. Well, here at this point, it looks like you get back on track, with the career a little bit, and you're running off a couple of wins. What do you remember about? I don't want to mess up this kid's name, Nissan Osterneck.
this was a Hawaiian kid.
Okay, I got you.
Uh, yeah, he was
Slugger.
jiu-jitsu black belt.
Okay.
Um, I remember it was my first fight after my daughter had passed, and I was full of so much of emotion that it was just mentally and physically exhausting. Like I was in good shape for the fight, dude. And 2 minutes into the fight, I was so tired. I felt like I had run a marathon. I mean, it was a real sluggish performance, but it was just because there's just so much going on in the brain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I try to overcompensate what's going on mentally by physically, like the day before the fight, I did 5 minute rounds on pads, and I was going all out. Yeah, dude. Yeah, you know what I mean. So it's just like,
Okay.
uh,
Okay, but like I said, it shows a lot of mental strength too, because just to pick up a win after all that is special. That's a good thing. You got a split decision there, and then you keep it going and you fight Rob Timmons.
yeah,
What do you remember about
Rosedale
that fight?
Reaper.
You got to stop.
I just remember like he had a decent submission game. He had a good guillotine, and he's as tough as nails. You know, out of all the people I've fought, I think I gave him the worst beating I've ever given anyone. You know what I mean? And I remember like in the third round, he was in his guard, and I gave him so many elbows, dude. I had split him wide open. He was bleeding all over the place. The referee was Jason Herzog, and I remember looking at the ref going, "Stop the fight." You know what I mean? I hit him a couple more times. I look back at the ref. I'm like, "What the fuck, man?" You know what I mean? The
Mm-hmm.
ref stops the fight. But a year later, I ran into Rob again, and he told me that he was feeling the effects of that fight for months.
Yeah.
And I remember telling him, I was like, I didn't feel comfortable hitting you. You know what I mean? Because I knew you were hurt. You know what I mean? You weren't doing shit. It wasn't like you were fighting back. You were just taking shot after shot. That's not that's not good.
Yeah.
You know what I
No.
mean? I felt bad hitting the guy. I'm not here to kill dudes. I'm here to make a living. Make a
Yeah.
living, and I enjoy the sport. I don't
Yeah.
want to fucking kill anyone.
Yeah. No, for sure. Sometimes, uh, I look at old school boxing a lot, and one of the sayings a guy named Ad Walgas had was the best thing a fighter could have as an instinct is to know when he's hurt his opponent. And the same thing with a ref is like you got to know you can't be missing what's clearly in front of you, but sometimes it
Yeah,
happens. And it's a
yeah,
shame, Rob paid for it, you paid for it earlier in the fight. When you're feeling the effects, yeah, again, you know Jack Dempsey in terms
yeah,
of like Dempsey hit a guy with a liver shot. The guy said he fell for 2 years.
yeah. Yeah,
So
I'd rather get hit in the head than the liver.
yeah,
That liver shot is no joke.
yeah, no, for sure. That's something that you guys experience head on. It's like when you guys start talking about it, and you've experienced it, man. It's a special thing, man. Crazy stuff.
Yeah,
So Kimmins, now you get kind of a UFC poster boy. Maybe now he's a little bit more forgotten, and I know that he got involved with I think the lawsuit and CTE and stuff. But you fought Nate Quarry, and that
yeah.
would have to qualify as a very very big win at that point. What was your perspective at that point?
I thought Nate was a good matchup. I felt like I was a little bit sharper than him on my feet, but he was a durable opponent, and I knew he liked to stand and bang. I remember his fight with Caleb Starnes, where he was chasing him around the ring, for
Yeah.
3 rounds. So Nate's a guy, and I remember his fight with Rich, even though he didn't win that fight. Nate's he's a game fighter. He understands the business, he understands what he's getting into, and he's there to fight. I thought that matchup was going to benefit me. You know what I mean? And at the time, now I'm training full time with Peter Welch, and Peter was just really helping me get my hands better. So my confidence in that department was growing as well. I just thought it was a good matchup for me, so I asked for the fight.
Now, you asked for that one. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now let me ask you a question. You don't have a million fights, but you also entered the sport a little bit later. Here at this point, you're 37, 38 years old. How is everything holding up with you said you suffered some brain stuff and you had a lot of breaks to jaw and stuff, but how are you coming together physically at 38? Are you,
I
rising
didn't
again?
I didn't have any major injuries other than a fractured skull when I was 13. I didn't have any major injuries. I
Okay.
was pretty clear of that. And I was training hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I was grinding all the time. My body was in good shape. I was in good physical shape.
Now, am I
I
wrong?
was in good shape. I was in good shape I mean, I was in really good shape till about 40. Then at
Okay.
40, things start to slow down. My reflexes and everything else, they all start to slow down after like 33, 34, but I didn't really notice it until my late 30s, early 40s.
Now let me ask you a question. If I remember, you a roofer?
Yeah, amongst many things. I was a laborer for the local union 609.
Okay, so yeah, so because I remember you were kind of lanky and tall and big for the weight class, but always with that like hardness, like you did roofing, guys like that did lumberjack work and stuff like that.
Yeah,
They were cut apart, and you had good cardio throughout most of your career. So
yeah.
for sure. So the Nate Quarry win qualified. You called him out. Now you've got 3 wins in a row in the UFC. Did anything special happen to you? Did they call you, offer you a deal?
No, I was supposed to fight Alessio Sakara like 3 different times, man. And
Okay,
this is over a year, like about for a year, for like a year. I was supposed to fight this guy, and it just never came to. So I was in
okay.
Germany, and we were discussing it. Like, he couldn't. It was the day of the fight when he pulled out of the fight.
Oh,
I'm getting ready to go down to the fucking van. They're like, he's really sick. He can't fight. So my team and I were discussing like, who could we call out for a fight? And that's when the whole Michael Bisping thing started. So we're like,
okay.
fuck it, let's call him out. And I'm at the end of my career. I know that I only have so much left. I want to make as much money as I can, and I thought that would be the guy that could do it for me.
Yeah,
So
you're
that's
coming
why
off his
that's
TV
how
appearance.
yeah, and that's how the whole thing came about.
So what went into it? Describe to everybody. So you kind of called them out, and then they build up the fight. Talk about the whole thing.
We made a couple videos
Okay.
fucking with him. You know what I mean? And we knew that Mike is he's an emotional guy, so he's easy to stir up, and we knew that. So we just wanted to poke the bear, and that's what we did. We were fucking with him, and then I'm going to share something with you that I've never ever shared before. I'm getting ready to fly out on Thursday. Hold on.
Yeah, take a minute.
Yeah, nah, because I gotta get away from where I'm at. I'm getting ready to fly out on Thursday to go to the fight. On that Tuesday, I got caught cheating on my wife. So
Oh,
it was a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. I was out doing dirt, being an idiot, and I
yeah.
believe in God. And God was like, "Yeah, this is the end of this, buddy." So that happened. Then I
Yeah,
fly out there, and it was a tough time for me. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
not to take anything away from Michael. He's a great fighter. He's a world champion. He's a UFC legend, Hall of Famer. He's done his thing. And he went to the fight, and he was full of piss and vinegar, and that turned out the way that it turned out, and that's that.
yeah.
And after that fight, I fought. I forgot who the fuck I was supposed to fight. I was supposed to fight Sakara again. And this time I think he broke his arm or something. I ended up fighting Costa Philippou like on
Yeah.
4 days' notice.
And
You know what I mean?
Philippou at that time was tough, coming up as
He's
well.
tough as nails, brother. That kid's tough as nails.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But that was a fight where I thought it was going to be, we were going to stand up and trade. You know what I mean? He wanted to wrestle,
Yeah.
which really caught me off guard. You know what I mean? To his credit, props to him and to the Matt Serra team and all those guys who put it together for him.
Yep. Yep. Now at this point, like you said, you ran into now you lost two in a row. There's a lot of personal baggage there that may have affected you. Like you said, you got to go in there with everything pretty perfect, mentally, or else everything becomes baggage. So you kind of did it to yourself. I think
Yeah,
you understand.
yeah. All that's just my fault.
And,
You know
and
what, dude?
here's
I had it
the,
coming, Miguel. Not only did I had it coming, but it could have been a lot worse.
yeah,
You know what I mean? I was being a
yeah,
dirtball, and being a dirtball will get you caught. And that's
yeah.
life.
And here's the problem too is, you know, I wonder if more money, because you really haven't broken into the big money. So you're still kind of getting by here. I wonder if that would have helped or hurt because you never know. But
Well, we ended up making
living the
4 point.
lifestyle without the money.
We ended up making them $4.3 million for that Bisping fight. I mean, we saw the logistics on it because it
Uh,
was the videos were making their rounds, and that fight went being from a whatever fight to the co-main event.
and what'd you get for it?
I think it was like 26 and 26,
Okay. All right. So
something
you
like that.
made, unfortunately, you took the loss. So 26, no bonus, no nothing.
Nah, they hooked me up because he gave me that dirty knee, and I instead of backing out, I just continued to fight. So Dana White hooked me up. He gave me both the win and show.
Okay. All right. And that's, Dana's been known to do that, generously in the back rooms and stuff. So that's good. He took care of you a little bit. Now, the Costa Philippou fight, split decision, didn't go your way. Do you think it was a fair split decision, or do you think you might have won that one?
I thought it was fair.
Okay.
I thought it was fair. I mean, I was in my corner. My corner was telling me, "You need to knock him out or submit him to win the fight." So they were
Okay.
being honest with me. So it was no surprise to me.
Okay, and now you come back and you get one more in with Eric Schaefer, another hook and shoot veteran.
Yeah.
And you get to do something a lot of guys haven't gone out with. You go out with an 8-7 UFC record, a winning record. You go out on a W, kind of go out your own way. What are your thoughts on this?
Um, I was really happy with all that. The fight was tough. He had won the first round. He had taken me down. He's a legit black belt, and he was controlling the fight. Didn't land any real major shots. He landed a few good ones, but he was controlling the fight. You know what I mean? And second round comes out, and he tries to go for a couple takedowns, and he got stuffed. And then I started connecting with a few good punches and ended up stopping.
And now, did you? That's 2012. Was that it for you? At some point, did
Yep.
you go for Korea? Didn't we have a conversation some point in there? What am I thinking of?
No. I got to go out there, to train with the troops and stuff like that. I got to
That's
hang
what it
out and
was.
do those kind of things. But after that, I was done. I opened up my own gym and did my own thing until 2016. In 2016, we sold everything and moved to Florida.
And you said you're living the dream there. You're happy in Florida. Everything's kind of together at this point.
Yeah, Florida's been good to me. I like it here. The thing I like most here is that I'm with my mother and father. I get to see them a lot. They're in their golden years, and I love my parents more than I could ever describe or even care to explain. So it's for me, it's I'm privileged
Yeah.
at 51 to still be having my parents here and spend time with them and receive their wisdom and their knowledge and their, with my kids, they get, my kids get to some of I'm blessed, and my brother's here and both of my brothers are here. And I work with my brother. We work together in his business and he takes very good care of me. I make a decent living here doing what I do. And I get to see him every single day, and I get to see my sister who lives here as well. Yeah. Like I'm blessed, dude. Like right now, like my brother and I, we've always been each other's best friends. You know what I mean? And we were growing up, like I told you, we moved from the city into the burbs, and we only had each other for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I remember, I don't know if it was your brother, but since you're sharing, I'll tell you one of those memories. I never shared it with anybody. It's one of those quiet things, but uh, after you beat Luder, somebody in your crew came up to me and gave me chocolate covered mushrooms.
Yeah, yeah. He gave me those too. I
Yeah.
shared those. I shared those with Jason Maxwell.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So we definitely had a little bit of fun back in the old days. The crew definitely took care of you back then, and glad to see that they're still taking care of you now. George, this has been awesome because I remember you're a stand-up dude. Obviously everybody has their ups and downs. You're honest in this interview. Talked about a lot of things. Some people might not want to, might want to keep to themselves and things or whatever. But you're a man from the very beginning to the end. You stand behind it all, and it's been a great interview, man. Thank you very
Yeah.
much.
Hey, listen, man. I don't. I'll give you the good and the bad. You know what I mean? I'm a human being. I am so flawed. You know what I mean? I've done so many things wrong. You know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah,
glad that I was able to learn from some of them. Some of the mistakes I've repeated. You know what I mean? I'm at an age now where I can look back and be like, why did you do this? How did you fuck that up? You know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah,
I can't go back and fix those things, but I'm at peace with them. You know what I mean? And it's like, they don't eat me up anymore. I don't have the pressure because of them. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
the worst things that I've done, dude, I can't change those things. I can't, what I mean? It's behind me.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm not that guy anymore. And I've learned from those mistakes and try to be a better man from them.
That's great to hear. Let me ask you the final question: Are you still going to the gym, working out, martial arts, training people?
Nah, dude, look at this. Look at this thing. Look at this thing.
I still wouldn't
Hey,
mess with you anymore.
I put on about 40 pounds. I got about 40 pounds I could afford to lose. I don't work out. I work all day long, but I work in the sun. So like I'm in Florida, brother. You know what the fucking heat is like out here? It's brutal.
Yeah, it's
So
hard to
after a
get to
day's
the gym after being all day in that.
yeah, man, it's impossible. Like when I
Yeah,
come home at 5, 6 o'clock, I start my day at 7, and I work for myself, so I make my own hours. But I choose to work. I want things, so I choose to work longer and harder hours. And when my day's done, I'm fucking tired, man. I don't in the gym. Eat that shit, dude. Let me have a freaking Corona. Let me sit on the couch and relax. And within 2 hours, I'm sleeping.
all right, brother. All right. Well, I thank you very much for the time, man. And we getting into your Corona time or getting into your sleep time here, and I appreciate it, brother. Thank you so much, and I'll send you links and keep in touch. When it's
Likewise.
up, it'll probably be up in a week or so.
Likewise. I appreciate it, Miguel. Thank you very much, brother.
Big hug, man. Great to see you. Thanks.